Right,
we
I
go, that
believe we
beautiful
are
courtroom.
live. How is everyone doing on this fine day?
Fantastic.
I'm excited to defend my rat man.
Yes, we have a lot of rat men and women and theys. Actually, I don't think everyone's a dude, actually. I don't know. Some of these people, I think gender might be a little bit weird, but
We all know that only men are problematic.
that's true. Like, you want a good problematic character, you look for a man. You go find your
My
Walter
character
Whites.
has dysphoria, if that helps.
I mean, does it help them?
No.
I could have tried to go the Ted Kaczynski route. Could transition have saved mine?
I'm glad that we didn't go with that. All right, before we start, I'm gonna open a prediction for the chat that I'll let run for like the first 15 or 30 minutes. 30 minutes where we'll get to see a couple arguments before it closes.
I think 15, because like if you're going off of like them trying to predict based on just us, then it's like you don't get to know how that's going to turn out yet. They're just going off of like, you know, their preconceived notions about us hosts.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's kind of what I'm going for. It's just preconceived notions.
Okay. Can we reveal what this poll is going to be? Or are you waiting to drop it on them first?
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Confirming prediction. I'll need to confirm the outcome within 24 hours to make sure that people get their points. Who will have the most problematic fave of the 5 people presenting today?
Okay, I'm gonna guess. I think it's gonna be Audrey. I'm gonna put my channel points on that one.
I'm going hard on Jane. It's got to be Jane.
I know what Jacqueline's is, and I agree with her. This motherfucker is not problematic and is completely defensible.
I'm gonna also go for Jane, just based on what I saw people discussing.
Wow, no one going for themselves. That's great and promising. I love that.
We're trying to get ourselves set up as winning cases as soon as we can.
I'll take the punt. I'll say Chris is the most problematic.
Great. It's not a bad bet.
Good stuff. All right. With all that out of the way, I should call this meeting of the Parliamoont to order. However, as you might know, I like to contract out a lot of my moonshot duties to some other subcontractors and companies that do decent work. But the company I've been working with suffered a tragic death, and they've still not really fully bounced back. So I'm happy to announce that actually I am passing over most of the MC duties tonight to a new rising star in the field of Twitch live streaming entertainment. I want you all to give it up for my good friend, Gumi!
Me. Wahoo.
Wow!
And, oh yeah, you can't see that in the actual...
Oh, okay, now...
I have
yeah,
the Twitch stream
you
open.
can see it on the live
I
stream.
got the
Yeah,
Twitch
yeah.
stream open. I can
There we
see.
go.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that bit of the bit.
Is this a Pokemon, or is this...
This is...
What?
Gumi is a dragon-type Pokemon.
Okay.
And Gumi is very proud to be here at their first official hosting gig. They know you're a little bit intimidated by their star power, but they are here to call to order this June meeting of the Parliamoont.
I do feel a little underdressed next to Gumi.
I mean, we all feel a little underdressed next to Gumi. So, on the Parliamoont, we are here to discuss various topics, argue about them, and at least in this format, in the end, after each person gives a 5-slide presentation, we'll have 5 minutes to follow up with questions and concerns, and then we will vote whether this parliamentary member's argument is valid or bogus. Also, I'm adding some stakes here, along with the prediction I have running as to who's going to have the most problematic fave, so who's going to get the most votes for bogus. Also, the most tightly contested vote will be the subject of a future Parliamoont where we will put that character on trial with a prosecution and a defense.
Whoa.
So, we
That's
have...
pretty big
Hey,
stakes.
Exactly.
My
so
character
got...
literally goes through that in canon.
Uh-huh.
So, does that count?
I mean, we can see whether that child got it right in canon.
Audrey, if you lose, if this becomes you, I would tell you, argue the thing where you can't get tried for the same crime twice and just skate. That's what
That is a
Absolutely.
good call. That's a good
Absolutely,
try.
double jeopardy.
All right. So I'm going to pass things over to Chris, who has our first of 5 problematic faves. Anything you want to
Yes.
say before I swap over to your slides, Chris?
I will say that when you first see the name, you will think, wow, that's one of the most problematic people of all time. And then by the end of my thing, you'll say, that's one of the least problematic people of all time. So let's let it rip.
Okay. Presenting
My man, the most problematic of problematic faves, Judas Iscariot.
Oh, I forgot to take off my... I forgot that I had it done a different way. One sec. There we go. Boom.
Yes, defended by it's me, Chris Hutton, attorney at large, and as the word art there that I couldn't get to be a different color says, I'm squinting to read it. I will successfully defend. Oh god, that's really hard to read. You know what? I'm just saying. I will successfully defend Judas in fewer slides than it took days for God to create the earth. My bold claim. I also predict a 100% across the board valid vote.
All
Let's
right.
proceed, shall we?
Interesting.
Powerful stuff.
Is there a way to make the thing with my... There it is. Okay, cool. As you can see, Judas was the hottest man alive. He was also a great singer. Heaven on Their Minds is the best song and scene in the history of musicals. I've provided a YouTube link. If I had it my way, the entirety of my 5-minute presentation would be eaten up by you all watching and listening to this, and then I wouldn't have to say anything else. But in the interest of not getting copyright struck on Twitch, I'm just going to leave that there, and y'all can look it up. Heaven on Their Minds from Jesus Christ Superstar. That's my version. Jesus Christ Superstar, Carl Anderson's rendition of Heaven on Their Minds. Look it up. Enjoy. Next slide, please. Did I mention he's the hottest man alive? Look at him. Okay, so this is where the meat of the argument really gets in. You're like, last one was a little silly, but this one we're getting real. When Mary Magdalene anointed Jesus' footsies with expensive perfume, Judas is like, hey, why are we wasting all this expensive perfume on this man's feet when we could be selling it and like giving the money to the poor? Jesus said, she has kept this perfume in preparation for the day of my burial. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. Now, which of these statements will get you canceled? If you saw these two people on Twitter, which one is becoming the main character that day for being a shitty person? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is where it's getting a little, we're diving in. I'm going to argue here, successfully, that betraying Jesus was actually good. So as you know, 007, if Judas didn't betray Jesus, God's plan of having Jesus die for all our sins does not happen. His motives are debated by various, academic sources, and depending on your which book of the Bible you're looking at. I think John was pretty biased, but either he plays the part of that God laid out for him, or some other poor sap does. So it's going to happen regardless, whether Judas is the one that does it or not. You also could wonder how much free will he had, because if your definition of God is like, he knows everything and he like has the grand plan and everyone just like puppets out what he wants. You could argue that Judas had no say in this. You also could say if this had to happen in order for the benefit of mankind, how can we judge the dude that made it happen? If Jesus forgiving our sins is a good thing, then we have to acknowledge that Judas is a necessary part of that. Next slide. And how was he rewarded for his part in forgiving mankind's sins? Well, depending on which book of the Bible you want to go with, he either A, was overcome with guilt and committed suicide, or B, God spontaneously combusted him and spilled his guts out. Both terrible fates when essentially he had no choice and his actions led to the supposed greatest good that could happen to the world. I think it's more problematic to use someone as a pawn and then blow their guts up than to unwittingly be with someone's pawn and lead to the forgiveness of mankind's sins. So give God the Judas kiss and vote valid.
All right. Thank you, Chris, for your defense of Judas. I am going to start a poll that will last 5 minutes. When that ends, we will make our votes, and if there is a tie, the which poll will be the tiebreaker.
So the only question from y'all is going to be like how many times you can vote valid, correct?
Good question for you.
Oh,
Yes,
wait,
go for
oops.
I have a direct quote from Judas. It seems to me a strange thing mystifying that a man like you can waste his time on women of her kind, referring to Mary Magdalene, here depicted as a sex worker. Yes, I can understand that she amuses, but to let her stroke you, kiss your hair is hardly in your line. Well, what do you have to say about this blatant this sort of phobia being depicted here by Judas?
So I've got that. The way that I would spin this as Judas's lawyer is I would say that it's not so much about him judging sex workers as being like bad or wrong in themselves. He's worried about the effect that can have on Judas and Judas's campaign to free their people. And so he's saying like maybe just not in front of the cameras, Jesus. You know, like I don't mind in general, but like we got to be image conscious.
Now, do you think that keeping Mary Magdalene as a dirty little secret is better?
You know, I'm not someone like God who would be like, any kind of like lie or sin is worth me like lightning bolting your ass and all your family members. I don't mind a little secret now and then. Like, it's okay. Jesus doesn't gotta be perfect. In fact, he's not, because he's talking about like, oh, my feet, they're so important. The poor will always be here, but my feet won't. Like, you know, so I don't know. I don't have a problem with it.
Jesus is out here trying to, like, you know, normalize sex work, make it more like societally accepted, less marginalized, and Judas is really shitting on all of that, I think.
You know, and that's a fair perspective. It depends on how you look at these sort of like movements. It's like whether or not you just go full bore with what's right, or if you're looking at like, well, we're arguing on trying to get the best result, so we kind of have to work within what we're given. And you know, that's not something we're debating here today, but it is part of the argument here. Is because Judas was a little bit more like, Jesus, you have to be careful about the way you do these things, or else you can fuck up the whole thing. Whereas you could argue that Jesus is more like, I'm just going to show them the way. You know, Judas isn't perfect either. But I would say that in terms of being this large-scale universal sinner and traitor, like up there with Benedict Arnold, in terms of the people whose names come to mind for that, right? If he doesn't betray Jesus, then our sins don't get forgiven. All of us are going to hell or something, right? So Judas did ultimately a good thing.
Now, coming from the perspective of someone who is Jewish, how does this this matter to me when I don't believe in hell, and also don't think that Jesus needed to die for any of our sins?
Okay. A point you'd think the lawyer would have factored into before now. Then... Okay, I'm gonna. Well, now this is like, is this problematic for me to like, spin this way? Am I gonna get like myself put on the thing?
See, now I've got you into double problematic reach around gambit.
Hey, no Homestuck. No Homestuck.
The only kind of reach around I don't want. I think that if you look up things about Judas, there's mention about how he's often used to be anti-Semitic. Like he's used as an example of why like Jewish people can't be trusted or whatever. And so like, I would then kind of just twist and be like, well, like, you don't want to, like, write him off, though, right? Like, he's taking the blame for shit that's not his fault, and, like, he's, like, being used to give, like, the whole group a bad name and whatever else. So, like, you at least don't want to go that far, even if you're like, hey, it was fucked up that he did the pieces of silver thing. Maybe you can give me, like, a half valid, half bogus vote here.
Abstentions are not allowed in the Parliamoont.
I would... From a different perspective, I'd like to come at your argument that, like, you know, Judas was a necessary part of the process, and, like, that kind of shakes out as it being a good thing that he did what he did.
Yeah.
Because you essentially argue that, like, because everything is pre-planned by an omnipotent God, you can't really judge his actions as evil in this context. But that is, like, that's a very subjective, like, theological perspective you've got going on there, Chris.
It is.
There
you
is...
know what? Is the thing about that is that... in normal circumstances, the conversation may be different, but I'm looking at it in terms of, like, the reason that Judas is problematic is because he betrayed Jesus. But if you believe enough in the subject matter, usually the line of thinking there is, like, it's bad because he got him killed, but also you're looking at it as like, but he needs to die. Now, granted, there are exceptions to this, as Audrey covered, but if you're looking at it from that large swath of the world's perspective, I would say you have to let Judas off the hook. Now, if you're telling me he's being accused of a different crime, that gets a little bit dicier. I don't think I've answered your question at all. Can you?
I'm just saying that, like, if you view it not as like this is a series of events that needed to happen for the big grand plan, and more as a test of Judas's faith, a test of like what will be done by humans with free will by a god who has bestowed it on them, it kind of looks like Judas did the worst possible thing when given that opportunity.
But then it's weird though, right? Because then it's like, well, what was gonna happen to Jesus if he passed the test? Then like he just like continues being like a guy and just like dies of like a pneumonia someday, or what? What are we?
In Jesus Christ Superstar, sorry to cut you off, but we do see a burgeoning revolutionary movement.
Also, we are just about out of time. So, last comments, please.
Go ahead, Jacqueline.
What can you say about Judas possibly squashing a revolution with his actions?
I was really thinking this whole time that my argument was solid because I was just going to pin stuff like that on God and be like, hey, he made that happen. But if you're coming at me with like, hey, Chris, maybe God didn't do all that, then I kind of that's a head scratcher. I don't know what to say about that one.
Okay, 5 minutes have passed. The poll on chat has closed. I'm going to need votes from each of you with as much or as little explanation as you want.
This is bogus. We're not automatons, even in most like Christian figurings of the world.
There's one bogus vote from Jane.
I'll say valid because Carl Anderson is perfect as Judas. Yeah. Probably the best performance and one of the best performances in like just musicals as a whole as I've ever seen. Creates such a compelling character, and if we're talking specifically about him, I have to say valid.
Thank you, Jacqueline. It's like Jane forgot all about the first slide, which is about how hot and how good of a singer he was. Like, that doesn't count for anything.
Being evil makes people hotter, you fool.
I mean, yeah. I will give valid just because I like dismantling Christianity as a Jew. And anything that sort of serves that goes well for me.
Let's see. I am passing on votes from Juliet, who couldn't make it to the actual stream today, but does have a fave of their own to defend later, and they, on the topic of Judas, said valid. Yes. That's 3-1, and then let's look at the chat vote result. We have 56% of people voting valid. So that is 4-1.
I really thought y'all had me.
Judas is valid to bogus. So that is a solid valid rating.
Thank you all.
80% valid.
Jane is the Judas of this courtroom.
God made me do it. It was God's plan.
And by that, of course, I mean you did nothing wrong.
All right, so that is one problematic fave deemed valid. All right, all you Judas all the Judas haters in chat. You came to the wrong place, I guess.
Yeah, go suck eggs.
All right. Next up, we have Jane.
Oh God.
All right, let's see.
I got slaughtered in that vote, and now I'm going to get slaughtered in the court of public opinion.
Okay, getting your slides pulled up. All right.
Other mysterious people on the slide.
What on the slide?
Oh, never mind.
Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, you could already see what I was doing. Yeah.
All right.
Your time this is starts now.
So this is McGillis Farid from Iron Blooded Orphans. He is the series like Shah clone. He's like the guy with the mask running around doing the Machiavellian schemings and plans. And I plan to argue that he gets often like written off as basically a moron, but he's actually a really complex and tragic character who is like very sympathetic in a lot of ways. I also want to draw everyone's attention right now to the bottom left of the screen. There is an elephant named Andy who is going to be in the room with us for the duration of this presentation. We're not going to be talking about Andy because it's going to kill the fucking vibe, alright?
Very correct.
So, next slide, please.
Oops. Sorry. There we go.
These are very text heavy. So who is this fucker? He is like I say, he's the antagonist. He becomes the twist ally. He's a member of that series like big fascistic like authority, and turns out to be like working from within to try and destroy it, get rid of it, like its fucked up bloodline succession system, end like the Earthnoid supremacism that they have going on, and release Mars from colonial rule. Yeah, I'm sorry, person in chat. I can't. This is simply how I work. So the problems is that he murders a lot of people, including his friends. Andy the elephant comes into play here. He hires a bunch of child soldiers and feeds them into a meat grinder. And basically, while his goals are good, his way of pursuing them is like borderline Randian, because it's like we'll get there. We'll get there.
Hey, are you supposed to be defending them?
I believe in making this a fair and well argued thing. I'm also, because I know a lot of people haven't watched IBO because it's not very popular. So I'm giving people a grounding in what to expect from this fucker. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So McGillis's tragic backstory makes when you rewatch the series, it makes so much about him fit into place. Like the extremely fucked up things that happen to him, like leave him basically like cut off from any kind of connection and camaraderie and like love, and like his whole philosophy of like trying to hoard individual power instead of building community, you like see comes from that. You can see how he got to a place where he wants good things, and he just can't quite reach out to other people to like cooperate with them to make it happen. And so that's why he keeps like driving himself into these corners and doing like terrible things. And we even see in like the season 2 several occasions where like McGillis tries to like drop his mask, tries to like be a bit more genuine around someone, and every time it just whoever he's talking to just doesn't get it, and the mask comes straight back on, and he's just like alone again. And it's really fucked up and sad, and I feel really bad for him. Next slide, please. I'm expecting you all to be reading this. There will be a test later. Final thing, the title of the show is literally about how maybe you should let McGillis cook and maybe he's not that bad, because it's literally called Iron-Blooded Orphans, and you think that's originally about like the street rat kids who are in it, and then later on it turns out that that's like, you know, he is also a street rat orphan who like ended up adopted into this horrible system. He is also the Iron-Blooded Orphan, and it's really fucked up because it puts him in this situation where he's like one of them and also not one of them, because he's just not part of like the bonds of love that they share. And he's like he's part of the same like production cycle that they are, where like the post-disaster timeline, which is like where Iron-Blooded Orphans is set, is this horrible shithole where like everything is so broken and corrupt and hypocritical that it like is constantly creating like opportunities for like people to like grab power and like push towards a better world, which is like ultimately what he does. Like the end of IBO, as bleak as it is in some senses, is also very hopeful, and he's like in large part responsible for that. And I think like the tragic thing is that like he's so alienated that he can't get there in a way that is like good. So this doesn't involve causing massive amounts of pain and damage to the people around him. But I also think that like it's tragic and not entirely his fault. Next slide, please. I put too much text on the first view, so this one is just like a signing off one. This is just watch IBO. I think it's better than G-Witch, but also G-Witch is very fucking good. But basically, watch IBO. It's good. Please give me an A+, and also vote valid for McGillis.
All right, thank you very much, Jane. I'm going to start our 5-minute poll, so chat can put in their votes. All right, questions and answers.
Now,
Go ahead.
not to be throwing stones in my glass house here, given who I'm about to defend later on in this presentation. But do we think that traumatic stories justify putting forward generational trauma and cycles of trauma rather than trying to bring a stop to that?
I don't think he does that. Is the thing. In his own extremely fucked up way, he is trying to break those cycles, and in a lot of ways, he does. Like, there are certain like kinds of like generational trauma that are inflicted on him, and one of the first thing he does when he grabs some power is like gets the guy who did that and puts him in a fucking hole for the rest of the series.
I have a question. What say you about all the people who have sad lives who don't put child soldiers into meat grinders?
You know, I would say that those people don't have the cool Gundam that you can see in the background of this slide. And so maybe that's just a skill issue. Maybe they didn't have what it took.
Wow, cool robot.
Wow, cool robot.
So the argument is that he's not bad because if other people had a Gundam, they too would have put them in the meat grinders.
My real argument is that, like, while he did feed those child soldiers into that meat grinder, they also were all volunteers.
Jane.
Wait a second.
First of all.
So you shot down my guy because we're not automatons. Be like, it's a good thing that we use our free will to put the kids into meat grinders.
Listen, they got good hazard pay.
Oh, Jesus.
Jane, I have a question for you. I have two for you. First is, can you compare McGillis to a Gundam Witch for Mercury character in a way that will make me think of him more favorably?
Absolutely not, because the closest parallel to him in Witch from Mercury is Shadiq, who sucks dick and is like the worst version of McGillis.
Okay. Second question, can you tell me like 3 to 5 cool facts about his robot that might make me think of him more favorably?
It is the only one we see that can do sustained atmospheric flight. It has 2 swords, which are very cool and have a big glowing effect. It has the soul of a warrior from 300 years ago sealed inside it. McGillis got like cool biological surgery to be able to pilot it better. And the logo on its arm is like the only time we see like the old version of Galahorn's logo from 300 years ago. We only see the modern version apart from that.
Understood.
The tough thing about this court is like it kind of how I'm gonna vote kind of depends on like the exact like what are we determining here? Are we determining that they are in fact not problematic or that they should be excused for their actions or like what is it we're deciding here? Because like because you've proved that the behavior and the character can be explained by the tragic backstory, but I am not necessarily convinced that it can be excused by the tragic backstory.
I guess what I'm trying to argue is less. I guess I'm kind of missing the point a little bit. I'm not trying to argue McGillis did nothing wrong. I'm trying to argue like his actions were like understandable and like very sympathetic if you like view him as like a extremely fucked up and tragic hero in the story.
But then wouldn't anyone be understandable because you just like, well, that's a fucked up person. You know what I'm saying?
I plead the fifth.
I don't think the lawyer gets to do that.
Gumi can step in here and try to tighten the scope of the debate a little bit. Upon further reflection, Gumi decide that it's whether this argument for why this character should be like is one of the best characters from their show despite their problematic existence. Whether it's because they're actually secretly a good person, or whether it's because, like, they do have, like, good reasons for what they have done that you could, like, go and make an offense kind of like this. I don't know.
Okay,
I kind of leave it up to your personal judgment. But, because I don't want it to just be like, oh, it's a good character. It has to be, like, a good character who you can make some sort of argument for agreeing with their actions.
And can we hear the lawyer's stance on the agreeing with the kids in the meat grinder one more time?
All I'm saying is that they gotta get paid somehow.
Jane, was it even part of the plan? Did it even further anything, or was it just one of those scenes where it's like, I'm the bad guy, watch me do bad things? Like, was it like doing anything?
Chris, you're not supposed to ask how the sausage is made. That's the big thing about meat grinders. You're not supposed to look at them.
And Jane, to clarify, this isn't a literal meat grinder, is it?
It is not a literal meat grinder. It is a meat grinder in the sense of like putting rifles in their hands and sending them in to get shot.
Oh, okay. That does change things.
Okay,
they are like child soldiers.
So I'm going to have to ask for everyone who did not present here to give their vote. Is McGillis Farid from Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blood Orphans valid or bogus?
I'm going to say bogus because, like, I feel like he does have more choice in his actions here.
Along a similar line, I'm going to vote bogus because the defense presented the counter argument in their material in which saying, like, there are other characters who are, like, orphans and grew up in bad conditions, and they're the heroes, but my orphan didn't have a choice, and so I'm going to vote bogus. I also will vote bogus on the grounds that I would never support someone named McGillis.
The name is not great, I'll give you that one.
Jane, I'll slide you a valid. I think that from what I can gather of this show and McGillis, I think that he probably is more on the valid end for me of like char clones and that type of weirdo, I guess. Uh-huh. And he has a cool robot.
All right, and I'm going to provide Juliet's vote here. From my conversation with them earlier in the day, they also wanted to vote valid.
Let's go.
I think they're in the chat right now, so they want to change their mind. We also have a vote from the chat. Let's just take a look at the results of the poll. Winning the poll appears to be Gumi. Hey. Okay, anyway, the winning actual voting option is valid. 5 votes to 4.
You're out of your minds.
Let's fucking go.
So, it is on a 3-2 vote. McGillis is determined valid by the Parliamoont.
I will say that I was a little bit torn here because I was like, I don't know how harshly to judge this McGillis fella, because I don't know if like everyone after this is gonna be equally bad, or if like, you know, like this is a pretty rowdy one and they're gonna be a little more understandable after this. So it could turn out where it's like, hey, I should have gone valid on all of them because they're all terrible.
I mean, also, again, I was absolutely throwing stones in my glass house here. Like.
Okay, I believe we are now ready to move on to our third of 5 problematic faves. Next up is Jacqueline, yes?
Sounds good.
All right. Here we go.
All right. So today I'm preparing my defense for Captain James Flint. The guy...
Let's go.
You may know him as the guy from Treasure Island who's dead. Everyone's looking for his treasure. He's also one of the main characters in a television show called Black Sails. And this will also have full spoilers for that show. Next slide, please. So who is... Oh man, didn't get my silly little animations in there. How sad.
Sorry.
Oh, it's just fine. So who is James Flint, and why is he just a dastardly little fucker? I want to give the full view. See, he was, like I said, he was the guy who buried the treasure in Treasure Island. Even the dastardly Long John Silver was afraid of him. He named his parrot after him because he was like, this guy's so scary, I have to name a parrot after him. In Black Sails, he's this vicious pirate guy who he's out for nothing but like revenge, killing. He wants to become like the tyrant king of pirates. He's willing to do anything. He murders his best friend, murders children, murders a lot of people, coerces people into following his lead by like forging evidence and like making people lie for him. And he's a pirate. Ultimately, he does operate within a system that is dependent on the slave trade at the time. and he kills a lot of people. Also, he throws a very nice bosun over the side of a ship for disagreeing with him one time. And ultimately, he's just, he wants to reintegrate Nassau, where the show takes place, back into Empire. That's his goal. He is kind of just a huge asshole. There's a screenshot I have up there of him saying civilization needs its monsters, which isn't a very nice thing to say, I don't think. Also, possibly an undead thrall to a witch. That's weird. And ultimately, he's the Walter White of Black Sails. And, he's Walter White. Who likes him? Next slide, please. Anyway, so that's not right. This is mostly because over the course of the show, this is a quote from a Left at London video, how to make a Tyler the Creator song. His persona goes from manipulative psychopath to a lonely gay man who wants to destroy the British Empire. That's good. All right, next slide, please.
Oh, ow.
All right, so what's this guy's deal, actually? He was a Navy man back in the past of his time. He was really into the idea of reformism. He wanted to bring Nassau, which had been lost to the pirates, back into under the British Empire's warm embrace. Eventually, the guy who he was making that reformism plan with, he had an affair with him, and because it was politically convenient for the Empire, they exiled him. And so he turned to piracy and revenge. That's when he enters his treasure hunter era. He wants to become a pirate king and sort of rule and use that to get his revenge. A lot of stuff happens in season 2, and he realizes that reconcile with Empire is actually impossible. So instead, he's going to burn it all down. This is his killing children era. But the children were, to be clear, the children of slave owners. After that, he meets a camp of marooned former slaves. He learns solidarity. He learns that you can't just do it individually. You can't just do it for one people. You have to do it for everyone. And he becomes a principled revolutionary and decides to take down the entire fucking system. Next slide, please. All right, so this is Flint is so good, but every person who watches, like 30% of the people who watch this show come away from it thinking that he is like the darkness, that he is the monster, that his violent revolutionary ideals make him the villain of the show, when he's actually just incredibly correct, and also the show understands that he's correct, but people are just too afraid of revolutionary action to understand. I included a quote from him here, which is one of my favorite quotes from the show, where he says, "What's the trick, isn't it? If no one remembers a time before there was an England, then no one can imagine a time after it. The Empire survives in part because we believe its survival to be inevitable, but it isn't." And I just really like that. I think he's cool. All right, and that's my slideshow.
Right, thank you, Jacqueline.
Can I just say real quick, I can't believe I got a bogus vote when y'all are bringing in child killers. I can't believe Judas got a bogus vote.
Point of order, Chris. Wasn't Jesus the child of God? All right, the timer has started. 5 minutes.
Also, it's a Jennifer's body situation. You're killing children. No, I'm killing the British. It's not the same.
Yeah, killing British people is always correct and moral.
Cheerio. I have 2 follow-up questions for you here, Jacqueline. What was there a scenario in which he could have accomplished the same or better goals by killing the actual slave owners instead of their children?
He also did that.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Was there did we see a scene of the children like being like shitty and being like, yeah, like we love being like the family of slave owners, or were they just like we don't know what they really thought about the whole deal? Like they just like do we like how much do we know about the children before they get axed?
Has anyone asked if the kids just simply have bad vibes and are unpleasant to be around?
That's kind of what I'm checking here. Is like how much do we know about these children he killed?
I think so there's only one child technically, unless you count all the people in the town that he blew up.
Getting better.
Which there were probably children there. But I think the child had bad vibes. There's a lot of themes in the show about like domesticity and how that can only be found within Empire by doing violence onto others to a certain extent. And I think that this child did have bad vibes. Yeah.
This is
that's
why all
my
children are evil.
not all children are evil. There's some good children, but some children are evil. You know.
Jacqueline, can you tell me what the biggest blow Flint did to the British Empire was?
Yeah, so he destroyed the entire. He destroyed a lot of colonies. He destroyed like a bunch of cities, like not a bunch of cities. He destroyed Charlestown, and that was a pretty major sort of colony they had. He you like helped a bunch of enslaved people sort of unite and rebel, and sort of group them with a bunch of also pirates to create this sort of revolution. And he almost got away with it. And he very nearly did it. And well, then the rest of the show happened. I think biggest blow. I think that's it. Yeah, I think it's the biggest blow.
That's great.
I can't really ask any questions impartially because Jacqueline just finished making me watch all of Black Sails, and I am completely flint pilled. I'm my vote has been valid from the start.
A flint pilled cell.
Jane, can you take the stance of someone who wouldn't agree with me and ask me a question?
Let's go.
Jacqueline just like make it harder for me. I want a challenge.
Well, don't you think that, like, you know, there was a risk that Flint, maybe Silver did the right thing in the end, that maybe Flint was going to plunge the whole world into fire and madness, through pursuing this like very irresponsible and very violent slave war?
I have another quote from James Flint himself. I'm not reading this off. I just remembered it. It's engraved in my mind. They paint the world in shadows, and then so they paint the world in shadows, and then point to their light and say, "In the darkness there be dragons." They tell that to their children, but it's not true. In the dark there is discovery. There is freedom. There is all of that in the dark. That's my response. So
I understand completely.
Mm-hmm. He does kill children, though. It's true.
He kills like one.
Sometimes you got to kill a few kids.
Yeah.
Gumi, have a question. Is Captain Flint hot in your opinion? And if so, does that mitigate his crimes at all?
So as a lesbian, I do judge myself as someone who can look objectively at a lot of men's attractiveness, and so I think that he is I think he is decently attractive. I think there are times like when he like in season 1 he like murders a guy with like his teeth and he's covered in blood. I think that's pretty awesome and attractive. I think as he becomes just like more and more of a revolutionary, I think he sort of develops like he starts to smile more genuinely like one more time every season, and it's very sweet. And I think that it does mitigate some of it. I think that, you know, you have to have a powerful sort of what's the word? He's a charismatic figure.
Okay, that is time. Any final questions before we go to votes? All right. Hearing none. All right. Chris, how are you voting?
I still feel a little conflicted about the necessity of the child murder and how much good it did, especially if he already killed their parents, because I was thinking it was like I'm going to kill the kids to teach them a lesson kind of thing. I'm a little conflicted on all that, but I'm still going to vote valid. It sounds more right than wrong, honestly.
All right, Jane.
Not only was I already Flint-pilled, in the process of this presentation, I've realized that McGillis is basically like Flint stuck at stage 2, where he's just like burning everything down. So that has made me even more valid vote.
Hey, Audrey.
Oh, that's a big fat valid from me. We love an anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist king.
Okay. Let's see. Go and check what Juliet said. Also, Juliet, if you're in chat, I will be happy to see your revised opinion. Let's see. All right, Juliet did not say yes to James Flint, so I'm going to assume that's a no and a vote of bogus. But if they would like to change their mind, let me know. It is still an overwhelming 4-1 valid to bogus in that case.
I believe the chat was 100% valid as well.
Yes, chat was 100% valid, 0% bogus. So, I think that is a pretty solid decision for Captain James Flint. Oh yeah, no, Juliet is valid. So that is a clean sweep of valid for Captain Flint. I don't know whether that's just because he's just built different or whether Jacqueline has made the best presentation so far. Who could say? Okay, we have 2 presentations left in this meeting of the Parliamoont. Let me just take a second to get this set up. Right. Next up is Audrey, correct?
Focus is fair, yeah. I can see how...
Hey, here we go. You ready, Audrey?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Hi everyone, I'm Audrey, and this is Starscream, my king baby trash mouth. A perennial fan favorite, depending on how you count. Starscream has been in more pieces of Transformers media over the last 40 years than any other character, including Optimus Prime and Megatron. So for our purposes here today, we're going to be talking about one specific universe, and that is the first IDW Comics universe that ran from 2005 to 2018. I believe you will find that despite making many grave mistakes over the course of his life, IDW Starscream is not only not at fault for most of his actions, but even if he were, he still earns his spot both as a beloved fan favorite and someone whose presence tangibly improved the universe he lived in. Next slide, please. Maybe he was born this way. The discussion of free will is a central topic in the IDW universe canon, because when I say Starscream was born a killing machine, I mean that quite literally. In IDW, there are 2 ways of producing new Cybertronians. Either they are forged, their sparks released naturally from the well of all life vector Sigma and placed into bespoke bodies crafted by natal blacksmiths from their malleable protoforms, or they are constructed cold. Their sparks mass-produced and then frozen until they can be placed into the equally mass-produced artificial bodies, usually as instruments of war. Starscream is the latter. And it turns out that Starscream is really good at his job. He joins the Decepticons well after Megatron already has an extremely loyal and capable right-hand man in the form of Soundwave. But Starscream is so good at killing, as per his programming, that Megatron makes him his personal assassin and then his second in command. Do you have any idea how efficient a killer Starscream must be to usurp Soundwave's position? And so, yes, he probably has the hundreds of thousands of kills under his belt after, and I cannot emphasize this enough, 4 million years of war. But especially at the beginning, he was killing fascists. The Decepticon movement began in IDW as a freedom-fighting revolution, bucking against a fascist functionalist society that enforced rigid social classes, created people just to have them die, and dictated your social and political power based upon your alt form, what you transformed into. The people Megatron had Starscream taking out were senators and leaders in the legislature that made oppressing others their life mission. All I'm saying is that if someone in the USA was parodying certain congresspeople and senators and governors in Minecraft, I think we would all be celebrating them. And while the good of all may not have been what drew Starscream to the Decepticon cause as much as personal ambition, it is certainly not his fault that Megatron would later become himself a genocidal despot. Next slide, please. Speaking about Megatron, we need to talk about his relationship with Starscream and how weird and bad it is. I won't act like Starscream was totally innocent here. He gave Megatron as often as he got, but there's a clear power differential, and it was Starscream, not Megatron, who frequently ended up being within an inch of his life. Megatron showed special interest in making Starscream his personal punching bag, refusing to ever let him die. Megatron's own conflicting feelings on Starscream can be seen in him continuously taking him off the list, a record used by the maniacal Decepticon Justice Division, or DJD, who specialized in punishing traitors to the cause. It's the source of much ire for DJD leader and #1 Megatron fanboy Tarn, who could never get a straight answer for Megatron about why he wouldn't let Tarn kill Starscream. Their weird, bad, codependent relationship is well acknowledged by others as well. When Starscream enlists his former Trine mate, Thundercracker, who, along with their other former Trine mate, Skywarp, has known Starscream longer than anyone else, to make a documentary about his life for good PR, Thundercracker includes this line: "You're what made me what I am, Megatron. The whole time I was a seeker, what I was really seeking was your love." The two of them are so weirdly, badly intertwined in each other's lives that they cannot imagine a world without each other. Starscream remains convinced that Megatron will be the literal death of him, so much so that when a different genocidal lunatic named Tyrest makes a kill switch to take out every cold constructed Cybertronian, the only explanation Starscream can think of as he lays dying of heart failure is that Megatron, half a galaxy away from him at this point, has somehow found a way to do it remotely. Now imagine, you were born to kill in a society that views you as quite literally disposable. You find one person who tells you they value you and your skills, and in exchange for getting your hands dirty, they promise you power and prestige. Then you spend the next 4 million years under their thumb, convinced you are always only one half step away from pissing them off so badly they finally kill you and get it over with. This relationship is public and widely gossiped about, your humiliation and everyone's common knowledge. What the hell kind of decisions would you make? Next slide, please. Beyond Starscream being in an impossible situation for most of his life, one could argue that none of his crimes are actually his fault. That's because, without exaggeration, everything bad that happens to IDW is already Shockwave's fault. Now, in many ways, Shockwave is also a victim of the fascist society Starscream helped dismantle. Once a senator who looked to change the system from the inside, Shockwave was betrayed by other senators and subjected to 2 forms of torture. Emperata, which stole his face and hands, and you can see his face and his hand there being stolen from him, and Shadowplay, which stole his personality. This turned him into a cold, logic-based shithead who, after the war ended and a peace tentatively reached on Cybertron, attempted to fuck that 9 ways to hell and take it over again. He failed and appeared to die in the attempt, but was instead shot back in time and would spend the next 16 million years manipulating the trajectory of Cybertron, inventing religion by posing as one of the demigods who founded it, as well as the fascist society that turned him into this monster in the first place. What does that mean for Starscream? Well, one of his most inexcusable actions is killing his political opponent, but also good friend, Metalhawk. Following the conclusion of the war, the 3 factions, Autobots, Decepticons, and what are called Nails, non-affiliated independent life forms, neutral parties who stayed out of the war, each put one candidate up for a democratic election. Bumblebee was chosen for the Autobots, Starscream for the Decepticons, and Metalhawk for the Nails. Despite becoming quite close to him and saving his life just moments before, during a civil revolt led by the Decepticons, Starscream is presented with an opportunity to literally get away with murdering Metalhawk, and while he hesitates, his bad habits do eventually win out. He kills Metalhawk, blames it on the Decepticon mob that had staged the revolt in the first place, and wins the election, becoming the first democratically elected leader of Cybertron in millions of years. But this too is Shockwave's doing. To see his plans to fruition, Shockwave needed a patsy in charge, a weak leader who could be easily manipulated and toppled when the time was right. He spends millions of years preparing for this moment, including creating prophecies while playing Onyx Prime that Starscream is the chosen one that will lead Cybertron to a golden age, and inciting the riots that gave Starscream the opportunity to return to his assassinating ways. Yes, Starscream made the decision to kill Metalhawk, but only because this asshole spent millions of years creating the perfect circumstances for him to do so. Next slide, please. And in terms of judging Starscream's character, I find that one of the best ways to evaluate is the same as in real life, by looking at the company he keeps. And when left to his own devices, he forms his closest relationships with Autobots, namely Bumblebee, Wheeljack, and Windblade. In the same revolt that killed Metalhawk, Bumblebee also appeared to die, but was instead sent to something called Infraspace, a world between worlds. For reasons that were never explained, the only person who can see him in this world is Starscream, who becomes convinced that he is losing his mind and that Bumblebee's ghost has appeared to him Christmas Carol style as the voice of his previously unavailable conscience. While Bumblebee doesn't have much choice but to befriend Starscream in this circumstance, Starscream does. And even if he thinks it's his own subconscious here to haunt him, Bumblebee, beloved by all who knew him, becomes his closest confidant. And notably, when Bumblebee returns from Infraspace, he maintains his friendship with Starscream. In the early days of rebuilding Cybertron, the planet was largely uninhabitable. With both of them coming from scientific backgrounds, Starscream works with Autobot engineer Wheeljack and forms a quick bond with him. Wheeljack is one of the first to say fuck factions and to advocate for cross-faction collaboration. He expresses his explicit trust in Starscream. In a Decepticon revolt, Wheeljack gets shot in the head and is presumed dead, except Starscream goes out of his way to save him and bring him back to full health. Because, again, he was so touched by the trust and confidence Wheeljack shows him. And then Windblade is a city speaker from a colony called Camus. She missed basically the entirety of the war and only became a major presence when Starscream, as president, tries to bring back all the colonies and reunite the planet. Although she struggles with Starscream's political manipulation and power grabs, she's also the only person to truly see him as he is. She doesn't necessarily believe in him as he is, but she believes deeply in his potential and works with Wheeljack and Bumblebee to form him into a ruler Cybertron deserves. And they do. He starts making better choices. He starts doing things for people who aren't him. And eventually, at their sort of insistence, he actually confesses to all of his crimes over the course of both the war and the post-war faction. He goes to jail amicably without fighting it and stays there for most of the rest of the series, only coming out at the very end to make the ultimate sacrifice. Shockwave's big plan at the end of all of this is to get Unicron, a planet-eating eldritch mechanical horror, to basically wipe out the universe. And Starscream gives his own life to make sure that all of those around him can live. He ends up also trapped in infraspace, where only Bumblebee can see him this time. But he is willing to do this. Someone who has been painted as a coward his entire life makes the conscious decision to die to save the universe he lives in. Next slide, please. And he's stupid hot. Hey, I want you to take a look at this man's shoulder to waist ratio. Look at these. And I want you to tell me that he could do a crime. Anyway, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
Right, I'm starting.
I would let him do crimes on me.
I'm
Yeah.
a 5-minute poll.
Listen, I may be a lesbian, bottom text.
I would first like to ding Audrey for perpetuating unrealistic beauty standards. Second,
Dope. Well, I have a response to that. He's dysphoric. He's dysphoric. He changes his body all the time, canonly, because he's cold constructed and wasn't given the body he was supposed to have. So he, canonically changes his body all the time because he's dysphoric.
all right. Okay, so here we go, Audrey. I'm gonna really let you have it with this one. Are you ready?
Yep.
Now, are you saying that someone who says they could shoot somebody and not lose voters, who's suspected of being a different foreign powers patsy, is defensible?
Yeah, I am. Again, I mean, that is the key, is that he was a patsy. This wasn't his fault. This was 16 million years of manipulation from Shockwave, who basically created the circumstances possible for this. And it is also after 4 million years of, again, living under the yoke of someone who you thought was constantly going to kill you. I'm not saying it's a good thing that he said that. I'm saying that, but I'm saying that the circumstances that led him to his position and to make these decisions weren't his fault, and he shows genuine remorse and reform for it afterwards.
Chris, are you implying that Starscream has boxes of classified Cybertronian defense documents in his house somewhere?
I'm saying a lot of other comparisons are lining up, and so I really wouldn't doubt it.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. It's I take a little bit of issue with this. Is Starscream's story seeming to partially be a bit of propaganda for the efficacy of the carceral system? Can you speak to that?
What I would love to do if I had more time, send you a video of Megatron's trial in which Starscream testifies about Megatron's thing that someone did the I'm his right hand man hand the interview over, which is basically exactly what happens. I'm a silly rabbit. Is that what he calls you? No.
No.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna come at this from the angle of, this Starscream is not as transgender coded as the Transformers animated one, but what you just said about the dysphoria has kind of sunk that one.
Oh, yeah, no, it's very transcoded. It's unfortunately in a really badly written miniseries called Till All Are One that I don't like to talk about, but it is very transcoded.
Instead, I will say, you write off him shooting a political opponent during a riot as quote unquote returning to bad habits. Which I think feels like you're intentionally downplaying how bad a thing that is to do, regardless of context.
I mean, I will say, I started off that slide saying that it's one of his most inexcusable actions.
And then
That's
you
fair.
proceeded to
Right.
excuse it. Interesting.
And yet you live in a society. Interesting. That's how you sound, Chris.
I understand your points. I almost feel, and this is a different angle than we've been going at everything here from. I feel like you've just brought a fave. I don't see much problematic here. To be honest, I don't see this character as particularly problematic at all. I question your problematicness.
Ooh, a different kind of bogus vote. Interesting.
I mean,
Yes, that is
I think that
acceptable
is-
bogus vote.
I
If
think
you feel
that's
that
a
way.
very bold take to make, Jacqueline, but I'm not going to fight you on it.
I already got everyone voting valid locked in for me, so I can make that argument now, and no one
Yeah.
can use it against me.
Let's see, we have like 10 seconds left on the clock. Any last comments?
I love Starscream too much to vote bogus on him, unfortunately.
Again, please, it's still up. Just look at that shoulder to hip ratio, is all I'm saying. Vote with your heart.
Okay, that is time. So, Chris, your vote.
As horrified and baffled as I am about Audrey's quickness to be like, "Yep, Trump comparison's a-okay with me," I will go ahead and say that because of it. Okay, if the same argument had been laid out without Starscream making amends and genuinely seeming to like reckon with and change as a human being, I would not be swayed by any of the stuff about like, oh, he was a sad robot and it was somebody else's fault and it's fine. But because of how much he was clearly willing to do to learn, change, and better himself and ultimately get the fuck out of there for the sake of other people, I'm going to go ahead and slap a big old valid on that.
All right, one valid. Jane?
Yeah, I'm also gonna have to go with valid. Like, he does do that thing that Chris just said. He does like do a bunch of horrible shit, but also make a genuine attempt to like back off from it and make amends. So I'm also gonna have to go valid.
Hey, 2 valid votes. Jacqueline?
Valid. Yeah, come on. It seems pretty valid to me.
All right, 3 valid votes.
He's not even problematic to
Let's see. Juliet, when I asked them earlier, they can speak up in chat now if they've changed their mind.
I saw bogus.
Was valid.
Oh, was it?
Believe so. They can correct me, but I'm pretty sure. And if I go and I look at the chat poll, well, it is a valid vote winning, but we've got some more serious issues to deal with, so we're just gonna yeah, you're done. No, why can't I get rid of you? I want to grab you. Oh,
You try to meat grinder.
there we go. Get out of here.
Jane, I really thought it was like, I've not seen the television show, so I thought you meant a literal, just like, like
Yeah, listen, there's a reason that I chose IDW Star to every other version of him.
The thing is that in G-Witch there is just like a machine they put children into to vaporize them, so I can see that being real.
Holy shit.
Okay, we have one final presentation to give. This is Juliet's pre-recorded presentation. Let's see. This will be going through a different audio thing than your chat in the Video Ninja, so it will be fine if you want to make a few comments along the way. Just they can't stop if you want to interrupt, so yeah. But that should be just fine. I will still need to be running slides for them. There we go. Let's go right ahead.
Oh,
I've
wow,
had to-
even further back into that than me. Okay.
And I have had to jump back into host. We've had some pretty major issues with the guest host, so yeah, apologies for that. I think this should work. Chat, let me know. Just make sure you. Oh shoot, who's not going to hear this is everyone else. So I guess the rest of y'all could open up the Twitch so you can actually hear Juliet's argument. Let me know when you're ready.
This is going to be a delightful mess of different delays and not being able to hear things and respond and stuff.
Getting an ad.
All right.
Star Wars Outlaw, okay. Guy sniffing an apple. Yep. Good argument, Juliet. Hey,
Sorry, I
Flo,
should've
now that's a
thought about
problematic fave right there.
Let's see. Anyone in chat have a good problematic fave while we're waiting? This is our last of the night, and I don't think anyone in the chat's going to say it other than Juliet.
Okay, I'm back from ads.
All right, Chris, good. Jane, Jacqueline, Audrey, you all good?
I didn't get an ad. I'm all good.
All right.
30 more seconds of ad.
Okay.
Oh my god.
That's a lot of ad. Let's see. I've really struggled to come up with a fun problematic fave if I was going to present one. I don't really have a great answer. Oh, I said that to CJ and she was like, no, you have tons of problematic faves. But I don't know if I really think of them that way.
You really think Gumi's crimes are that excusable?
Gumi's done nothing compared to Snom. It's all good. Like, I'm going to have a serious talk with them afterwards about professionalism.
I've returned from ads.
All right, let's roll then.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Juliet Lewis, and here's my defense of Cain, son of Eve. Damned for all time, problematique. Next slide. I'd like to begin with the same quote Jorge Luis Borges uses at the beginning of his incredible work, Three Versions of Judas, from T. Lawrence's Seven Pillars of Wisdom. There seemed a certainty in degradation. Next slide.
I know why.
Or from...
Sorry about that. I'm going to restart it and fix the echo. I know exactly what I was doing. Okay, actually, I am going to mute y'all so only Juliet's voice will come through. That's what it was. It was coming doubly through my desktop and the sound file itself. There we go. Sorry about that. Here we go. Round 2.
Cain is known infamously as the first murderer, but I think that assignation lacks context. Let's begin at the beginning with Genesis 4, our first adventure post-Eden. Adam lay with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man."
Oh, we missed a
Later,
bit.
she gave birth to his brother
Juliet says
Abel.
we missed a bit. Sorry.
Now,
Let's try this
Abel
one more
became a
time. I'm sorry, folks. I tested this a little bit, thought it would be fine, and then, of course, you know how it goes. Yeah, Great as now my browser has frozen. Go. There we go. All right, let's try this one more time. Wait. Okay.
Hi, I'm Juliet Lewis, and here's my defense of Cain, son of Eve. Damned for all time, problematique. Next slide. I'd like to begin with the same quote Jorge Luis Borges uses at the beginning of his incredible work, Three Versions of Judas, from T. Lawrence's Seven Pillars of Wisdom. There seemed a certainty in degradation. Next slide. Or from Cicero's Definibus bonorum et malorum, on the ends of good and evil, a passage every single one of you have read excerpts from, though not in English. Nor again is there anyone who loves or pursues or desires to obtain pain of itself, because it is pain. But occasionally circumstances occur in which toil and pain can procure him some great pleasure. Next slide. Cain is known infamously as the first murderer, but I think that assignation lacks context. Let's begin at the beginning with Genesis 4, our first adventure post-Eden. Adam lay with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel became a sheep farmer, but Cain farmed the land. One day, Cain gave part of his harvest to the Lord, and Abel also gave an offering to the Lord. He killed the beloved lamb from one of his sheep and gave the Lord the best parts of it. The Lord showed his favor with Abel and his offering, but not with Cain and his offering. Next slide. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Next slide. I'd like you to imagine for a moment being in Cain's position here. You have not been accepted by God, capital G God, the creator of you, of your kind, and the universe. You have instead been told that your best efforts and good, intuitive intentions are a sin. You labored hard in the field, and yet when you give your produce, the product of the intermingling of providence and sweat, it is denied as not only unworthy, but sinful in the eyes of the Lord. No sacrifice of something renewable, sustainable, or made without cruelty will ever be worthy. You are dragging your feet on what God is telling you to do, and that delay, any attempts at avoiding the obvious and bloody necessity, are moral malfeasances that to date rank in the top 5 sins of history. Next slide. However, your younger brother Abel has raised his flock with care and love and slaughtered it in front of the Lord, who has praised him and called this good. Your meat vegetables are not good enough, that much is clear. But what do you have equal to Abel's flock? What young, tender animal full of blood have you raised with love and care, as Abel has his sheep? It dawns on you why the Lord spoke in this way, but you do not want this to happen. You tried very hard to make the fruits of the earth enough. Cruelty is hard for you. Growing in the field, the only thing you had to be harsh towards was yourself. Plowing the field, feeling the harshness of the sun and the stones of the earth against your skin. Your own sacrifice is natural to you. The sacrifice of others, less so. So you decide to sacrifice a part of yourself, your innocence, just as you suffer the elements, as you worked the land with your hands. Next slide. The Lord said to Cain, "If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Rule over your feelings. Overrule your compassion. What is right is not always the thing you feel is right. You must rule over your sinful feelings, your emotional and human attachment. Perhaps God made you imperfect. Perhaps Eve. But you are the second person in the world to feel that friction between what is human and what the Lord would have you do. Next slide. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord taunted Cain, asking, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. am I my brother's keeper? The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." Next slide. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cast aside, cast asunder, bereft in the context of the creator of the universe, Cain did as he was told and was cursed for it. Cui bono? As humans, not as gods, I ask you, is this what is right? Or can we do what the Lord cannot and offer grace?
Hey, there we go. Unmute rest of the Parliamoont. Alright, thank you for sticking with those tech issues. But yeah, there we go. Juliet's defense of Cain from the Bible.
Very compelling. Very compelling. Very good. Very good sort of performance.
I think it's going to be pretty
Definitely.
obvious where I'm going to lean on this one, giving my presentation. Yeah, sounds like God should have learned to communicate a little better. He confused the poor boy and was like, "Oh, like grass thing's bad, blood thing's good." And then Cain's like, "All right, I'll do a blood thing." And he's like, "No, you're bad now." Seems like it all could have been avoided if he just I don't know.
Yeah. Jail for
literally anything other than what he did. Yeah.
Yeah, jail for Cain for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
I would say that my vote is that Juliet should do ASMR.
The great thing is that now we're always going to have this 7-minute clip. You can go back to your favorite YouTube VOD on the Moonshot channel and put on the Parliamoont, skip ahead to the Juliet part, and just, enjoy.
Yeah, a couple of you should just go and make video essays on these characters, because you've pretty much got the script down. You just need some visuals to go with it. And you've already got slides, which is a great start.
I mean,
we're asking for it, Audrey, if you didn't see.
I started a podcast instead. It's called Prime Cuts. You want to hear me talk about listen to Prime Cuts.
Boom, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, we are all podcasters here. Why am I trying to send us to the dark valley of video essays?
The land of Nod, east of Moonshot.
That's right.
I would also say valid. I do think there was a little bit of some of this was insecurity. Sometimes you have to work through that instead of killing your brother. But I think that I think I'll give Cain a valid.
I want to point out it was some of the first people Cain didn't know what fratricide was. Why would you have any idea of the concepts of it? You barely have a concept of death to begin with.
Yeah.
At this point.
This is very clearly a case of awful parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I tell you, if Lilith was here.
And we're the parents in this situation anyway. I'm not. I have to ask.
I don't have a vote in this, but I will say that my favorite depiction of Cain is from the Cain and Abel and Sandman.
I was
who are just stuck in a cycle of constantly Cain murdering Abel, but then always coming back, and there's there's the same sort of toxic codependence as you have with Megatron and Starscream.
In every universe, I would find you and divorce you.
Exactly. I would find you and murder you more.
Yeah.
I forgot to say so, but I was actually going to say, I came into this predisposition to vote bogus because of how mean Cain is in the Sandman comics, but, I was turned around.
Yeah, not a nice dude, but there's not too many, nice people in Sandman,
Yeah.
Mostly, I can't vote bogus to like that presentation.
Mhm.
Like, I would pretty much agree to anything Juliet asked of me.
Yeah.
If they use
This is a
that
good
voice.
presentation.
All right.
I will give props to the material as well as the quality of the presentation. I think that's a bulletproof argument. I don't see any reason to hold Kane accountable for any of that. This is literally, Juliet, you'll be happy to know this when you hear this. This has literally educated me about Kane. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I that's different than the guy they told me about. I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Chris, how many levels of Bible scholar are you on? 3 or 4? You're like little baby. Watch this.
Yeah, I am. I was raised safely away from all of this nonsense, so like it's all new to me.
All right. So it sounds like everyone is settling pretty solidly valid. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So we have 4 votes for valid. Unless anyone else in chat wants to vote, I will close the vote. Juliet says in chat, note that if you tell this story to other people, they make you think you're trying to justify murdering them.
But I think you could justify murdering them with this story. I think you could do that successfully.
Yeah.
Skill issue.
Yeah, exactly. Skill issue. All right, the poll is 100% valid, so Kane is our second completely valid character of the night. Well, it's late afternoon here, but I guess on the East Coast it is night. So
I would argue that Kane is the most valid of everyone presented here.
Oh,
I want to do
PB?
one last thing. Yes.
just really quickly, I actually didn't see what was the vote in the chat for Starscream?
I don't remember now, but it was at least a little bit contested.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't
All right.
100%.
I mean, that's fair. I thought it was going to be way more contested, honestly.
But chat voted everyone valid, you know? Chat
Wasn't it
didn't
only
think anyone was
contested because
bogus. Right?
Wasn't it only contested because they were also voting for Gumi? I don't think anyone voted bogus on Starscream, from what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, someone was messing around with the polls and adding options that should not have been there.
Dastardly.
Yeah.
Silly Gumi.
Okay, so
Whoever did that is bogus, not valid.
exactly. We should go to
True.
our ending. Yes. Let me just get our last. Okay, actually, we have a problem here, which is we ended up with everyone being way too valid. We ended up with 3 people who are 100% valid, 1 80%, and 1 60%. So
Rip Judas,
we're going to do
you were
one
a real
final
one.
round here. I'm going to let everyone throw 1 bogus vote at the character they think is the most problematic out of these 5 characters.
I mean, if you look at the graph you've made here, it kind of already tells the story.
Uh-huh.
McGillis is further to the left than everyone else.
Yeah.
You could fucking bury this guy.
Yeah, I think McGillis further to the left in some respects, but also seems further to the right in others. I just have to say.
All right, so Chris, you are voting McGillis. You're throwing your extra
Yeah.
bogus vote at McGillis.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Jane.
Let's see, Jane, where are you throwing yours?
I'm gonna throw another one at Judas. I said bogus before, and also I'm getting revenge on Chris now.
I knew that was coming. That's fair play. That's fair play.
Mutually assured destruction.
McGillis would love that.
Exactly.
Oh, and let me add the stakes here. The character who is closest to the middle here, that's who we will have a Parliamoont trial for.
I think I would say, as much as I think that Starscream is largely not problematic, I should acknowledge some of the more political assassinations and whatnot. I'll give one to Starscream.
Those were not
I guess
problematic.
I'll acknowledge those. I guess.
I still argued that, listen, again, if I could parody some of our current politicians in Minecraft, I think we would all be celebrating. And
Those political assassinations, the ones later.
yeah, well, yeah, those are less assassinations and more shooting a friend, which again is bogus. And no,
It's
that
that
is
one we're talking about.
yeah, that's fine. That I agree to. It's gonna be McGillis for me.
Okay.
God fucking damn it.
McGillis, and then finally Juliet has thrown in their
Hold on.
vote.
If Jacqueline had the Magneto shirt on, we could have done it. Too much iron in your blood.
Juliet throws a vote at Judas. Oh, oops.
Lol, Lamau.
Juliet, come on. We're like our arguments are so thematically similar. Like with
They
Judas and
they
Kane.
just want to relitigate. They
Yeah,
just
they
want to
just
get
want to
you as close
relitigate.
to the center as possible.
And yes, it does appear that Judas is the winner. I guess whoever wants to tackle that as like a full Twitch stream, that sounds like a good time and not a controversial time at all.
Now? How did I
This
lose
is bullshit, man. This was just another dog pile.
How did I lose this? Okay.
Well,
all right,
McGillis
fuck
is
it.
the full loser here. Or I think it's
Also,
more
again-
safe to say that Flint and Kane are both completely validated. There's nothing problematic about liking either of those characters. I think that is the conclusion we can reach here.
Look, if y'all want to run this back, I feel confident I can do this again and get mostly valid votes on Judas. I'll do it again.
Oh, what's this? I'm getting some word from Gumi. They're saying that I made a presentation for this. I did not intend to show that here, but okay, fine. We'll go for it. Okay, don't worry. This will be quick. I can get through this
Looks great on
relatively
stream,
fast.
by the way.
Oh, I know. I'm fully aware. So yeah, this is why Vriska Circuit has done nothing wrong.